So this is my last video of the night, and I'm just going to have a quick chat with you about expansion. So this is all relevant to the meaning of the times right now and what's going on with the planet and the coronavirus and the isolation and so forth. So I'm just going to talk about evolution. Okay, so where the human race is going is into expansion. Which seems a bit ironic because we're all kind of contracted at the moment. We've all sort of withdrawn into ourselves. But, you know, if you watch nature, then you'll understand that there's always contraction before expansion. And in fact, just before a flower blossoms, it kind of clenches really tightly and then it bursts into bloom. And I do believe that that's what's happening to us. And I also think that, you know, the way that we're evolving is you know, as I've said in other videos, it's an opportunity to evolve out of the egoic mind. The egoic mind is contractive. It's where the emotions sit, mainly the neurotic emotions, and it's all about an exaggerated sense of I, and, you know, the signature of the ego is every man for himself, greed, anger, survival instinct, and so forth. Okay, it's not, you know, it's no good pointing fingers at individuals and saying they're like that, because we're all like that. It's a human condition. So I'm just going to kind of reveal a very sort of short pointer towards how to become aware of coming out of that state of mind. So anyone who follows Advaita Vedanta or self-inquiry will be familiar with this, but I'm not going to just give you a dry self-inquiry meditation. I'm just going to talk a little bit about expansion. So what is required of us at this time as a human family is willingness actually to expand out of the egoic mind. And the way that this is done is by using a method of focus or awareness where we allow the self-identity to dissolve, which I know can be terrifying for some people, but where there's crisis, this is often a running theme, because crisis brings home an understanding that things are impermanent and they're not secure. But rather than allow this to bring you into a state of terror and fear, one has to see the bigger picture. So I know it's not easy to just kind of eliminate fear, but it's necessary to understand, to own the fear actually. You know, fear is not, you are not your emotions. This is something that has to be understood in order for us to evolve. You're not your emotions and you're not your thoughts. They are things that pass through the system, through the human system, but they're not who you are. Okay, once you get a handle on that, it's possible to transcend them. So when we're talking about dissolving the sense of I think the most helpful thing that you can do is to become present. I know that Eckhart Tolle talks a lot about this. He's not the only one. Every single liberated soul will talk about the power of presence, because presence is a dimension. I talk a lot about dimensions. A dimension is a place that you can enter without moving. Okay, so you don't actually move forwards or backwards in space and time. It's something that's present within you. You contain the dimension. You simply shift the consciousness and go into the dimension. So a dimension of presence is actually a portal into freedom. The trouble is that we're very, very conditioned to live in clock time, which means that we go forwards and backwards. We're goal orientated. We try to get something, get somewhere and add it to ourselves. But this period of time has brought us the opportunity to stop all that and actually learn to be present. And through being present, i.e. by the quickest way to presence is to do things that you love. Okay, that really is, it's so simple. You know, whatever it is, whether it's singing or cooking or painting or, you know, looking after animals or whatever it is that brings you joy, is the quick path to presence. And once you're able to do that, then you enter into a different dimension, a dimension of ease, a dimension of joy, a dimension of relaxation. And you move closer towards liberation and you expand. So the consciousness, you know, there are many of us, but really it's just one consciousness. You know, if we take consciousness itself and divide it into individuals, it doesn't mean that there isn't still one consciousness. Do you see what I mean? So, you know, even though there's hundreds and thousands, millions and millions of expressions of consciousness, it still doesn't mean that that isn't one consciousness. And, you know, this is what we're moving towards, and I think that this is the purpose of this virus, to give us an insight into, you know, it's taking us away from running around like headless chickens, which is something that we've become addicted to, and it's actually giving us the opportunity to become one, present in this moment. So I think that one of the things that we can do with this time, rather than allowing fear to overwhelm us, but if you are in a state of fear, just as an aside, you know, let it, just sit with it. Just sit with it and see if you can cultivate a sense of, rather than allowing it to overwhelm you and believing that it is you, to understand that it is simply an emotion, and the way that we are made as human beings is that energies pass through us. They're not stored within us. When they become stored, when we're unable to process them and allow them to leave, they become illnesses, you know, because energy isn't really meant to sit inside you stagnantly. It's meant to move, which is why physical exercise is so important, because it's a way of moving energy. You know, creative expression is another way of moving energy. So we have to sort of work towards bringing these things into our lives, rather than becoming stagnant and allowing fear to overwhelm us. So when fear does come, you know, allow it to see it for what it is, which is an emotion. Allow it to have its say. Just let it have its say, but don't buy into it, and it will pass. You know, that's how emotions, that's how they happen. And if you cultivate a practice of watching your emotions, you'll see that they change all the time. You know, they're not who you are, and they haven't really got the power of you that you think. So once you allow the fear to pass, you'll see that the canvas, if you like, or the background, you know, if you imagine that life is a stage, just like Shakespeare said, you know, you'll see that the background still exists. So the background doesn't go away. You know, it's the stable component in the human system, or the human entity, or the human being, or whatever you want to call it. You know, we now have the opportunity, through this practice of stillness and withdrawal and presence, to expand into a greater awareness and become one collective consciousness. I hope that makes sense. Okay, thanks for watching.